Chapter 12 is going to focus on the impact media consumption and use has on our development during adolescence and emerging adulthood. And as you may imagine, media use has becoming an increasingly large aspect of development in everyone's day-to-day life. This lecture will focus specifically on some statistics of media use, as well as different theories of why we use media and how media impacts us. We will then cover a few controversies that come along with the study and consumption of media, and then end by talking a little bit about how media has shaped the world. So let's get started by looking at how much media use we actually see in the adolescent and emerging adult population. Before we look at the numbers, take a second and maybe try to guess how much media you use on a day-to-day basis. Keep in mind that media can include anything from TV to magazines to social media to listening to music. As you might imagine, if you total the amount of time we spend engaging in all of these activities, we see a large chunk of our life being taken up by the consumption of media. In fact, we know that many adolescents and emerging adults, specifically in developed countries, report even constant or almost constant use of media. Always having their phone on them, checking it constantly, listening to music while doing other tasks, then switching to watching TV, and maybe reading a magazine from time to time, although that, of course, has become less common. We know that about 88% of adolescents have a digital device, or what we used to refer to as a cell phone. The average adolescent sends 30 text messages a day. 70% at the time of our most recent data points reported using Facebook, and 55% use Instagram. Those numbers have, of course, likely changed to favor TikTok at this point, but we don't necessarily have current data on that. But of course, many social media devices, or what am I even trying to say? Social media platforms are a constant part of many adolescents' lives. And as I mentioned, almost a fourth of adolescents say that they are constantly connected or near such. So keep in mind that this does include many different aspects of media or different types of media. The average teenager watches 2 to 3 hours of television a day and listens to music for several hours as well. Overall, on average, adolescents and emerging adults are spending about 8 hours a day engaging in various types of media use. So the question then becomes, how is this media use impacting their development? Researchers who study media and psychology have spent a lot of time investigating different ways that media use impacts us. One theory that has been proposed is that of cultivation theory, which states that watching television or consuming any media in general shapes a person's worldview. So over time, as I watch more and more TV, read more and more books, or see more and more posts on social media, my worldview begins to resemble what I've been consuming. For example, one study found that watching the show Teen Moms actually seemed to cause girls to believe that being a teenage mother was an enviable state, which is the worldview expressed in the show itself. Other research that I've actually been involved with has found that watching shows like The West Wing, for example, in addition to TV impacting worldviews, can actually have an effect on our overall abilities. One study, again, that I was involved in found specifically that watching award-winning shows like The West Wing can actually increase an individual's interpersonal sensitivity or their ability to read other people's emotions. So TV can be teaching us things about the world, impacting our attitudes and opinions, and even impacting our social skills or theory of mind. Another important theory to keep in mind that's very influential in the field is that of social learning theory, which hopefully you're familiar with. But at its basis, social learning theory believes that people imitate behaviors that they frequently see other people model. So the more and more I watch sex on TV, the more and more a teenager is going to have sex themselves, which is, of course, one of the big concerns about media use when it comes to studying adolescents and emerging adults. So TV and other media is impacting our worldviews, impacting our behaviors, and even impacting our abilities. This is the abstract of a paper that I published a couple of years ago looking at the effect of watching the television show The Good Doctor. And what I actually found was that watching this show, which somewhat accurately depicts autism spectrum disorder, actually improved people's knowledge about autism spectrum disorder. So we can learn about actual real world things as well, or in this case, about minds that work very differently from our own. I also found that participants who watched this show, compared to watching a lecture about autism spectrum disorder, actually had more positive attitudes towards individuals with ASD. A lot of research has found that the media we consume actually impacts our attitudes towards other groups of people. For example, one study found, and this is really cool, that reading Harry Potter actually improved children's attitudes towards immigrant populations. So, overall, some really cool things, although potentially troubling depending on what we're consuming, what we're watching, have been shown to relate to our media use. But I want you to keep in mind that although research does suggest that the media we consume actively impacts us, there is something to be said for the media that we choose to engage with. The use and gratification approach to understanding media highlights the importance of an individual's characteristics when it comes to choosing the media that they consume, and then how they're going to respond to that. So, for example, teenagers who like rom-coms are different from teenagers who don't. There's something about teens who like rom-coms that sets them apart from teens who choose to not like rom-coms. Because of those differences, we might see different impacts of that type of media use. Some girls will feel insecure when they see social media posts. Other people might not feel insecure when they see social media posts. Or they might choose to not get on social media in general. So it's always important to keep in mind that we're selecting what media we use and consume. And those choices can sometimes be very powerful and even make up some of the effect that we think we're seeing when it comes to the impact of media use. People play a role in how media impacts them and what they choose to consume. We're not just passively being impacted by the stuff we're choosing to read and watch and listen to and follow. So, an interesting model of media use that accounts for all of this is called the media practice model, which stipulates that our media use starts with identity, things about us that motivate what we select to pay attention to, how we interact with that media, and then how we apply it to our own lives. And overall, that comes back and continuously impacts our identity. So, our characteristics impact the media that we choose, how we choose to engage with it, how we use it, which then comes back and impacts all of those different aspects of psychology that we've just reviewed. Now that we've talked about a few different theories for how media works, I want to make sure we're not underestimating the importance of why we use media in the first place. Adolescents have been shown to use media for a few different reasons. The most common, of course, being for entertainment. The entire point of media is to entertain us. It's created, no matter what we're talking about, social media, music, television, and movies and books. It's created specifically to capture our interest and entertain us. So of course, that's going to be one of the more common reasons that we engage with these things. But especially for adolescents, media has also been shown by self-report to play an important role in adolescents' identity formation. Adolescents have been found or have reported engaging intentionally with different forms of media in order to expose themselves to different things, different worldviews, to try on different characters, different hobbies, to kind of put themselves in someone else's shoes for a while to see if their experiences, their desires, their beliefs match with their own. So engaging with media in this way can actually further that identity development that we've talked about so much this semester. Another interesting aspect of adolescent media use is sensation seeking. Many adolescents have higher than the adult level degree of sensation seeking or thrill seeking, and we can actually experience that through media use. It creates powerful feelings in us, either watching something dramatic happening on TV or even seeing something scandalous in a social media post can create these strong sensations in us that are rewarding for many adolescents. Media is also commonly used by teenagers and emerging adults as a way to cope. For example, many teens report spending a long time in their rooms alone every day listening to music. We've visited that topic earlier this semester. That's a way of using media to help them process the emotions of the day. And then, of course, social media, as well as video games and movies and TV shows and magazines, allow us to connect with other people. And that's particularly important for adolescents who are forming a youth culture identification, wanting to connect with other people at a similar developmental period as themselves. That brings me to the end of video 1. Video 2 will pick up by looking at some controversies of media use.